アメリカの週末が終わり、一気に佐々木朗希選手関連の情報が更新され始めましたね。オフシーズンの週末はメジャーリーグ専門チャンネルがお休みのところが多く、更新が遅くなり、大変申し訳ありませんでした。今回は、佐々木朗希選手のポスティング、ファンソト選手の契約金額に注目した内容を翻訳してお届けいたします。ぜひ最後までご覧ください。このチャンネルでは日本人メジャーリーガーに関する現地番組の様子と気になるメジャーリーグのニュースを翻訳してお届けいたします。お見逃しのないよう今のうちにチャンネル登録をお願いいたします。
Live in studio, and I have a list of questions for you, my friend, on a Monday. Good morning to you. Starting with Matt walking in, saying he was listening to you and Eduardo on MLB Network Radio talking about Juan Soto, and there was a 7 in front of the number. What do you think? Will he get that, and what would you pay him? Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I think Scott Boras is a record setter. Right? Think back to Alex Rodriguez. He got $252 million, not because somebody was pushing them to go beyond $250 million. It was because at the time, Kevin Garnett had the highest professional sports contract at $126 million, and he wanted to double it. So he got the Rangers to agree to go to $252 million. He's going to want to set a record. And so, is it going to be the present value of Ohtani's deal? I actually think it's going to be 14, 15 years. He's going to want it to be $701 million. He'll defer some of the money to be able to get the AAV down to where the present value is down near Ohtani or even a little less than that, but to be able to set the threshold number. So I think he's going to want it to start with a 7, or he's going to try to get it there. And look, you've got the Yankees and Mets in World War III in New York, a showdown with those two teams. Hal Steinbrenner has to sign Soto. Steve Cohen's going to sign Soto, and it's going to run the price up. And so I'll be shocked if it doesn't start with a 7.
14 or 15 years starting with a 7 is mind-boggling. I'm so curious when, Steve, I could ask the same question about Roki Sasaki. I know about the refresh date in January. How does it benefit, now Leiter and I were talking about this before the show, how does it benefit the club to post him? Take me through it.
Yeah, it doesn't really benefit the club. I mean, it's so interesting. Like, I would love to have Sasaki on my team. I will not ask him for financial advice. I mean, listen, he can wait 2 years, and he could be Yamamoto getting $325 million. I mean, he's going to get $5 million, $3 million right now. The team's going to get 25% of that. They changed the rule. The team's not even going to get a big payday out of this. I think that the team's doing it because the player wants it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense from a financial point of view for the player or for the team under these circumstances. But, it's a different culture. They're honoring this. And, so many of the Japanese players I signed, in fact, his manager in the Chiba Lotte Marines is Masataro Yoshii, who was one of my players back in the day. And I remember when Yoshii came over, he said, I just want to find my place in the baseball world. And I think so many of the Japanese players want to do that. And it doesn't matter about the money. And so it's interesting, and it's going to come down to, and this, what it does, it opens it up for all 30 teams. Everybody can get in on this, right? This isn't a matter of who's got the money to afford it. It's going to be who can sell their development, who can sell their team, their franchise, how they're going to make it comfortable for him. It seems to me that it used to be that Japanese pitchers wanted to go to a team that they would be the only Japanese pitcher or player. I think that's changed. I think the comfort level and where players have been able to assimilate and be developed in a way, I think that right now the Dodgers, to me, would be the odds-on favorite, the chance to win. You've got Yamamoto and with Ohtani there. It seems to me that that's going to be. Now, his agent has placed Senga in New York, Seiya Suzuki in Chicago, Darvish back in the day in Texas, and Yamamoto in L.A. So geography hasn't really been a factor for the agent, but it sure feels like it's a Dodger player to me.
Respect between player and team. I keep going back to what you said. It's awesome. When I was watching, every time I watch MLB Tonight, the printer's going, what's going on back here? And I see the name Willie Adames. Matt, stop printing. I see video right after that of the Dodgers. I mean, it's like you can't see one without the other. Where is his most likely place, landing spot?
So, I understand it's the Dodgers, but can the Dodgers get everybody? I mean, so they cleared a spot for Soto in the outfield now, right? With Teoscar Hernandez, they can put Soto in the outfield. They can put Adames at shortstop. They don't need Adames at shortstop. They brought back Miguel Rojas and picked up his options. They have Tommy Edman who can play shortstop. They have Mookie Betts who can play shortstop. They have Chris Taylor who could fill in at shortstop. And yet, Adames wants to be in a big market, I think. I think his preference is to play short, although he'd be willing to play third if teams want him to do it. But I could find any number of different teams where he would be a fit for him. And look, I think Milwaukee's at least going to make a run at him to try to keep him. So I think it's going to be interesting. And, I wonder if Detroit would make a play for him to be able to bring him in there. They're ready to win right now. And then you wonder, all right, well, if Houston loses Bregman, would they make a run for him to be the third baseman down there? And so I think that he's a dynamic player. He's a big personality. He's a great young man.
Yeah,
I mean, he is just a great kid. But I understand why he would fit the Dodgers. They've been tied together for a long period of time, but it's going to take a lot of money. And yet it seems like they're just printing money in L.A. right now.
And so let's talk about him, wanting or being able to or being willing to switch positions. Perhaps listening to you, that's not necessary. Congratulations are in order to Clayton McCullough, new Marlins manager. What do we know about the new skipper in South Florida?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So he has some managerial experience back in the day in the minor leagues with the Toronto Blue Jays, so you can check that box. He's been in the Dodgers organization for a while. Great respect for Andrew Friedman, and anybody that Andrew Friedman vets in Los Angeles is somebody that I think he would think would be a good fit for him down in Miami. And so I think you've got a guy who's a player development guy, background winning pedigree there, managerial experience before. He also, oh, by the way, lives in the offseason in Jupiter, Florida, which is where the Marlins spring training facility is. And so a Florida resident as well, so it fits in a lot of different ways.
All good things. Live in South Beach, manage baseball for a living. Yes, please. Steve Phillips with the very latest. Thanks so much.
You bet.
We are going to step aside on a game we like to call Free Agent Face-Off. Put your GM cap on.
Okay.
I'm going to give you two names, and you decide who you want. Are you ready? By the way, Matt just said I look like a downhill skier. Do I? I thought I kind of looked like a rock.
It's the channeling. Yeah, I like it. It's good. It's good.
Between Blake Snell, over his last 14 starts of the season, a 1-2-3, and Max Fried, 29 starts in 2024, 11 wins, and a 3.25. Pick your poison, Matthew Edward. What do you got?
This is like the race car that occasionally gets a little wide of the turns versus the pace car that's always predictable.
Whoa, did you just think of that?
Ooh, I did.
That's
nice.
very
This is a
smart.
little something I whipped up. I'll take Blake Snell. Nothing against Max Fried. I love him, but I think Blake Snell just gets undervalued. Just the discussion around, he used to walk dudes. His peak is higher than anybody else's peak in the sport.
Yes.
I want that. I want that.
I'm with you. I know we didn't talk about it. Max Fried, you said it perfectly. He did have a forearm issue earlier in the year. I don't know what that looks like with respect to how many years, but God, Blake Snell. Like, just watching him, you say that's what the ace looks like. That's what the Cy Young Award looks like. I don't know what the amount of years or whatever, but I'd take Blake.
A man after Al's own heart. Mark Sales, our great researcher today, put this together for you, Al. This is your age 30 season comparison. So this is Al Leiter, 1996 as a Marlin versus Blake Snell. So not a lot of hits. There was a walk in both of your games. This was Snell's Cy Young Award year with the San Diego Padres. But anybody would take those two guys anytime.
Look at that. I didn't know. All right.
Put it on your screensaver. That's cool.
30 years old.
That.
But I never won a Cy. What happened?
Snell's 32, by the way, on opening day. Max Fried, 31. Nathan Eovaldi and Yusei Kikuchi. Eovaldi, one of the great big game pitchers in sport. We know that. And Kikuchi, 10 starts with the Astros, a 2.70. He was fantastic down the stretch. Al, you're up first.
Well, so we go from the, no offense, the lower end of the baseball economic stratosphere to the top end of it, and talking about the Yankees and the decision that we heard of over the weekend. Not a surprise, and we're glad for Booney and glad for the team that the Yankees exercised their option on Aaron Boone. He'll return for 2025. No surprise here, not even in the least bit. In fact, there's probably more meat on the bone after this option is exercised. Of course, Booney led the Yankees into the World Series this year, where things didn't exactly go their way, but altogether a really good year, a really good baseball guy. And, look, there's nothing to say but good for both sides on this one.
Yeah, I mean, where are we on Aaron Boone? Like, he's a great baseball guy. He has been very good, exemplary for a manager for the Yankees. We are in a very in-depth layer aspect of how field managers manage with multiple coaches now, not only in the dugout, but also behind the scenes, literally in the clubhouse. So, the collaborative effort of where we are with respect to how managers manage. What I like about him, I mean, first of all, he's fiery as can be, Matty. And I like when you have managers that actually, fight for your causes. I don't know how many times he's been thrown out, but it seems like almost every week or so. And he has his players, and he has the respect from the players, and I think that's where they are. Obviously, getting the World Series. I know that was a bummer of Game 5, hoping to push a Game 6 to push it back to LA. But yeah, this is no question well deserved with Brian Cashman, this front office.
I guess the big question with the Yankees is going to be who's going to be on that lineup card for him, because the Juan Soto sweepstakes have only just begun. The other team in New York is going to come calling. I'm hearing some really unbelievable figures on, and again, it's all media speculation, but they're talking about potentially, and Steve Phillips is going to be here in studio later on. I can't wait to have Lauren ask him about the conversation he had with his co-host Eduardo Perez earlier today. They were talking about maybe that number for him, Soto, having a 7 in front of it. My pushback on that is, and nothing against the player, he's generationally great. He's not Ohtani. He doesn't play on both sides of the scorecard, and he's not huge in Japan. So why do you think you're going to compete with that number? No human is going to compete with that number. It becomes like an ego thing.
Yeah.
Not for him, but for the people that maybe are doing this on his behalf.
All right, so how many teams? Look, it's Scott Boras, right? He's, when he takes his premium marquee free agent, that's what he does. He moves the needle. He moves the marketplace. And that's his piece this year. It seems like every year he's got that piece. So he's going to go for that. I think what makes this extremely intriguing, I don't know how many teams have the ability to have an AAV somewhere in that high 40s, close to 50, which probably looks like it. He's really young. So I think when you look collectively, it's probably over a 12, 13, 14-year deal, right? 14 years takes him to 40 years old.
Well, they could still land south of $700 million and have the highest AAV in the sport, because of the deferred money on Ohtani's deal. So if that's the feather you need in your cap to thump your chest and say, look what I got for my client, fine. I just think it's preposterous to consider anything north of Ohtani money for anybody else.
Don't underestimate what Scott's going to do and pitting the Yankees and the Mets, because the Mets are all in. The Mets are all in.
Yeah.
They're going to go after him.
Wow, this is going to be fun to watch. Anyway, Booney's going to be managing whoever he has in the Bronx next year. Lastly, before we say good morning to Lauren, Roki Sasaki is the next great generational thing coming over from Japan. Yeah. And he's going to be posted by the Marines, his current employer there. He's 23 years old, grades out highly across the board. All the speculation has begun. Does he want to join Ohtani and Yamamoto in Los Angeles? People have been quick to point out online that he grew up a Yu Darvish kid. So maybe the Padres are in play, but the Padres aren't spending money now like they were 3 years ago when they gave 31-year-old shortstops 11 years guaranteed, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that San Diego is as big a player in the Sasaki sweepstakes as some other teams, but look, not dissimilar to the discussion we just had on Soto, there is a large, lucrative pasture awaiting this young man here stateside.
Yeah. So, look, I'm intrigued, and I'm not into the basic agreement of the Japanese players and their owners, but I go back to starting with Nomo, and they had to play become a legitimate free agent. It was age based. The fact that we had Ohtani be able to come here at such a young age, and now Sasaki, I'm intrigued by it because they don't have to. So there was a respect factor to this by allowing him. So therefore, every team should be in on this guy. It's no different than signing an international player, or think of him as a draft player, because it's not going to cost you that much, and his salary is actually going to be
there could be a legitimate sleeper team involved here.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the Angels were something of a sleeper team when they landed Ohtani 7 years ago. We all thought he was going to the Twins. Remember?
Yes. Well, you mentioned what Yu Darvish. Don't count out the Rangers either. But look, I think Joel Wolfe, who represents him, he represents a lot of the most recent Japanese players. He's gonna take the full breadth of the landscape, right? And I don't know where Sasaki is. Love his stuff, obviously. I mean, it's 100+ mile-an-hour fastball. His slider split combination, very similar delivery. I see, Matty, to Ohtani. Like, size-wise, he's not quite as big as Ohtani, but I love his aggressive look. I mean, these are just smooth stroke fastballs at 100, 102 miles an hour. Like, that was easy stuff. And it reminded me a little bit of Hunter Green. of just like bully fastball, boom, electric, explosive, out of hand. Fastball slider, but this split, what I think makes him a little different, and I think it has to be understood, because these are pitches that look like sliders, and not to get in the weeds, but this is an unusual split. Most guys that throw fastball split, it stays arm side. So the north-south is on the same direction. He throws it in a very peculiar way, and I think it kind of separates him. His velocity last year was down a little bit. He did miss some starts, so I don't know what was into that. But again, the number that it's going to take for him to get over here, it's not like the old posting days of Matsuzaka where it was really expensive. Yeah, I just wanted to show a little Ohtani. I see some similarity, and I loved Ohtani. I know he got hurt, but delivery, finish, and this is the money. You look at a Japanese pitcher, you go to his split, and this we'll be talking about more and more because it doesn't have the same metrics as most split-fin fastballs.
That's great. That's good stuff, man. I see Yamamoto at the top of his delivery there too. That'll kick. That little pooch punt that they do at the top.
Yeah,
he's gonna.
And emotion. I mean, obviously, this generation. I mean, I got a chance to play with Nomo. He came over to the Mets, and like they're so stoic all the time. They may be told not to be emotional. Man, this guy, he's got some fire in it.
It's good.
A week after the GM meetings, let's reassess with Russ Dorsey, National MLB Insider for Yahoo Sports. Good Monday morning to you, Russ. Roki Sasaki, a big topic of conversation. And there is a date, January 15th, Russ, the refresh date for international signing bonus money. Does that tell us what we're waiting for? Does that give us a timetable at all? What do you think?
Good morning, Lauren Shahadi. So, yes, I think it would give us a date for Roki Sasaki. For everybody out there that doesn't know about the international signing period, this isn't a situation like Yoshinobu Yamamoto where after the age 25 season, you can come over and sign as a free agent. This is going to be a guy that signs on a minor league deal similar to Shohei Ohtani. After December 15th, the new MLB international signing period begins, and all 30 teams will have new international bonus signing money. So if you look right now, if Roki Sasaki posts before December 15th, that would be the past signing period that goes from January 15th, 2024 to December 15th, 2024. There are only two teams currently that have international signing bonus money above $2 million. That's the Baltimore Orioles and the Los Angeles Dodgers. If you wait till after that day to officially post, then that opens you up to all 30 teams. So I imagine Roki Sasaki and his representation are saying, look, we have no reason to rush. Let's sit back, let the signing period go to 2025, and then all 30 teams can be involved in this.
Okay, all the hype in the world before he even gets here. We will be curious to see how it translates on a big league mound. We will see. I feel like I ask about, you talk about potential and what about proven, and that's Juan Soto. I feel like I ask about Juan Soto every single day leading up to him signing, and it is not going to stop, can't stop, won't stop. What are you hearing about his timeline? The guys were just talking about the first number starting with a 7, and Matt just couldn't believe that could be the case. What are they saying at the GM meetings?
I'm with Batty V. Like, the idea of a number that starts with a 7 is crazy. And you guys were just talking about Paul Skeens doing homework at LSU. Well, I did some homework, Lauren Shahadi. I'm going to throw some numbers
What'd you
at
find?
you.
Let me hear
The
it.
highest AAV in baseball last season, and I take Shohei Ohtani out of this because 68 of that 70 million is deferred, was $43.3 million. That was Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer. Now, if you're Juan Soto and Scott Boras and you say, all right, Juan wants to be the highest paid player in baseball in terms of total value and AAV, there's a way you can do that. Now, $44 million would be the highest AAV in baseball. In over 12 years, that would be $528 million. Now, that sounds like a number in the ballpark of what we should be thinking right now. However, you have a team like the New York Mets that are involved, and Steve Cohen, who's the richest owner in baseball, they have the trump card, Lauren. They could just say, you know what, here's the blank check one, and we will outbid everybody. That's always in the realm of possibilities. So do I think 700 is a number that's a little bit out of the realm of possibility? Sure. But I think when we start talking about 530 to 560, 575 even, I think that's right around where this thing is going to end up.
It's going to be fascinating. So curious when he signs so other teams aren't held up by the potential signing of Juan Soto. It's a trickle-down effect, Russ. It always is. I'm listening to you thinking of other guys who made a huge impact on their team in a short amount of time. I always think back to Dave Roberts talking about Teoscar Hernandez, the impact he made on that club in a short amount of time. What's his future and where?
Yeah, I would imagine that the Los Angeles Dodgers look at the season that they had with Teoscar Hernandez and say, you know what? We like the cut of this guy's jib. Not only was he a guy that was a great clubhouse presence there in L.A., he had a career year with the Los Angeles Dodgers, went back to the All-Star game, set a career high in home runs, always seemed to be a guy that when you get to that 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, came up with big at-bats for them, not only in the regular season, but also in the postseason. I would look at the Dodgers, but also a team that was looking at him before he signed with the Dodgers in the Boston Red Sox as being the two teams that are heavy on Teoscar Hernandez. But I think the fact that you have a guy that really figured out who he was as a player, but comfort is everything, Lauren. You look at where guys are comfortable. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener. You have to say, hey, I'm comfortable here. I played well here. There are people I like here. They like me as an organization. That's always really important. So as we get started here in free agency, those are the two teams that I would look at for Teoscar Hernandez right now.
Maddie's in on Boston this offseason, Russ. Now you're speaking his language with that team. Hey, Devin Williams, before you go, one more year of team control. Is this one of those guys who we're going to be talking about as a trade candidate all the way through from April on?
I think so. And this might be something where we talk about him as a trade candidate over the next couple of months. I think when you look at where the Milwaukee Brewers are, they're still a very young club. And historically, when you get a guy that's a year ahead of free agency, a la Corbin Burns or Josh Hader, they're going to look to move him. Now, I've talked to sources over the last couple of weeks that say those conversations have already started as they've kind of tried to see where teams are at. And there are a lot of teams that need closers. You talk about the Boston Red Sox. You talk about, the Baltimore Orioles, even though they're going to get Felix Bautista back from Tommy John surgery at some point. The Philadelphia Phillies are out there. I know Luke Weaver was fantastic for the Yankees in the postseason, but do they go out and look for a closer with some of the guys they have entering free agency? And of course, the Los Angeles Dodgers are a team that could be looking for a closer as well. Blake Trinan is going to be a free agent. So I look at Devin Williams, a guy who has a sub-2 ERA since he debuted in 2019. He is one of the top 4 closers in all of Major League Baseball. I know he had the blip on the radar in Game 3 of the wild card round against the New York Mets, but you're talking about the elite of the elite when it comes to closers, but also a guy who's going to be entering free agency next year. So you wonder what teams are okay with saying, you know what, this is the final piece we need to make a push in October.
Yeah, 1 year left on the Brewers. I've seen this story before. Russ Dorsey with the very latest. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Sure, that's what happened.
Thanks, Lauren.
Hey, as you might guess from the giant inflatable Seahawk behind me, I'm in Seattle, Washington right now, on my way to Taipei City, Taiwan for the WBSC Premier 12 tournament. A nice, quick 13-hour journey is ahead of me. The good news is I have 6 rosters to study on my way there. The host, Chinese Taipei, Japan, Korea, Australia, Dominican Republic, and Cuba. I love this tournament. I went to it 5 years ago. It features some of the best global baseball talent that's not currently on Major League 40-man rosters. It was at this event 5 years ago that I got to meet Seiya Suzuki, Ha-Sung Kim, Jung-Hoo Lee. Can't wait to meet the stars of tomorrow, today, and I'm quite positive I'll be asking every single person there about Roki Sasaki and when he may be coming to MLB and where he is going to sign. So certainly stay tuned to our coverage. The Seahawk is here, and by the way, before I leave this airport, my next point of business is to find the great statue that celebrates Harold Reynolds waiting for the longest ever flight delay in the history of SeaTac Airport. I think it's down the hall here, so I'll check in with you later on that. Back to you.
All right, welcome back to Hot Stove. We have
got that full screen, Bill.
Here it is, Harold, the full screen of notable free agent starters along a distinguished list. We put lefties, righties together in the same eye chart for you, but we want to pick off one particular name to talk about, Walker Buehler.
This is a high-end all-star pitcher.
Yes, this is. And, man, what a journey he had in 2024 alone, coming off injury, having not pitched for the better part of 2 years.
Yeah.
From the pit to the pinnacle, started out and just didn't look like himself. And I don't know how many broadcasters said that on the air. It almost became cliche. Well, he looked like himself by the end of the World Series. He was dominant, starting with the third inning of his division series start against San Diego, right? He had the clunky second inning, gave up the 5 runs. From that point forward, he was lights out. And I think that his free agent candidacy is as strong as it could ever be right now.
I agree. And I think when I look at Walker, look, he was the #1 pick. We know what transpired. He is a two-Tommy John guy, as you just mentioned too, Manny. He missed all of 23. I mean, if you look back, I mean, you have to go back to 21 where he actually had a full season, 33 starts. I've always loved this guy. There is absolute gunslinger aspect look about him. Just pure mound presence says, I'm an ace, I'm going to come at you, I'm going to rip your throat out. It has been a health issue. But I think what's different, and watching the World Series, and yes, you're right, he went through the Mets, he was great, and certainly what he did here in the World Series and then finishing out in Game 5 and everybody's jumping on him. I thought it was a bit coincidental with a guy that they knew that this is what they thought he was going to be, and then the roadblocks with all of the injuries.
Yeah.
But when you do have to go back, I mean, if you look at it, this year, 16 starts. He spent a fair amount of time in Oklahoma City, their AAA.
Right.
And he got to hit around a little bit. So what I saw, you know, guys get stuck in who they are. And I think if I were to look at him a little closer, and I just love the pedigree and who he is and the Bulldog, he started throwing more two-seamers. He throw the big slow hook, you know, because he was a guy that admitted, Walker, you know, how many, if you throw 50 fastballs, tell me how many of them you actually try to throw as hard as you can. And he looks, it's like, huh? I try to throw it as hard as I can every time. And that's not what I saw during the postseason. About a guy to gas pedal brake, tempered a little bit. You don't have to let it rip 97, 98. And the velo's down, but it's going to come back. I think it was an unbelievable learning experience. Somebody's going to get an ace. I'm convinced of it.
You also, along the course of that 13 straight scoreless innings in the postseason, saw so much kiss my aspirin bottle from him. He had this kind of like
because that's who he is.
He was just a bad boy out there, man. It was fun to watch because with everything he's been through, it's, you know, even if you're not a Dodger fan, who among us can't get behind a story of a guy that's had failing health for 2 years, probably questioned his own career many times during that stretch, then he comes back and is at his best on the brightest of stages. It was fun to watch.
22, he has 12 starts. 23, he missed. And then this year, 16 starts. Like, it went sideways. I mean, you know, he's going into his free agency. He made $8 million last year. Like, you would think a guy that as he's progressing his career up to free agency, it's more than that. Like, it has been a health issue the last few years, and I don't care. I think somebody's going to get, they're going to get somebody, you know, 70 cents on the dollar.
There's a similar conversation to be had around his senior staff mate, Clayton Kershaw, who's going to be 37. Exactly a hot take, because those that know him know that he has this gear. I don't know that there's a harder worker out there among starters to be good. And to last as long as he has, and this is going to, he pitched only 30 innings last year. We're talking about a guy that's getting into 18 years of his career now. To stay this good, you can't just mail it in, right? Not everybody can be David Wells and roll out of bed and throw strikes in their late 30s. I remember being in Anaheim a couple years ago, watching Clayton's day after the start workout. It was 175 degrees in Anaheim. This is the day after the start workout, right? And he's not just out there kind of getting the you know, the toxins out of his bloodstream and just moving around a little bit. This is part of it. This guy works his tail off. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I mean, you know, even Nick Steger and Kenley Jansen, along the course of, you know, hanging out and being best chums, they were like, wow, look at what Clayton does on the day after a start.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like, I'm a layman, and I look at that, and my jaw drops. You did this for 20 years, so you did something similar. But for those of us that are just fans, you're like, I get it. I get why that guy's good.
Yeah.
He's talented, he's gifted, and he works his tail off.
Yeah,
I get it.
When you get to the level, and there's very few, but he will be mentioned. He had a 5 or 6 year window that was every bit as good as the best, Sandy Koufax. You know, he was that good. So when you look at that, or as you showed his workout routine and all that, that's what you do. That's what you have to do. And what Clayton has done as you get older, and yes, he's had some injuries and arm stuff and body stuff. You've got to figure out, how do I make it work? And Side coming on with that big old fastball, curveball, and won all those Cy Youngs, and then slider, and then started throwing cutters and changeups, and he's evolved. But it comes down to this full screen right here, Maddie. It's a health issue. How many innings can we get? How many starts can we get? Going back, if you go back, you got to go back to 16, really, when he was. Cy Young.
But even if we go back to that, you would take, if you're the Dodgers, you would take the productivity that you got from him in 21, 22, and 23. I'll say, granted, it's 130 innings or fewer. So what? Because it's a dominant 130
All right, what's
innings.
It worth? Then that's where I am. This guy is a highway to being one of the greatest pitchers ever. He will have, I imagine they'll put some sort of, some beyond the plaque out at Dodger Stadium. Certainly he's going to have his number there. But what's that worth? What do you pay that guy?
That's a good question. When you're the Dodgers, does it really matter? Because you could pay Clayton whatever you want, and you're going to make it back in the interest that you're making on the Ohtani contract. I mean, we don't have the ability. Dollars. We can't understand their financials.
How about all the marketing dollars back coming back from Japan?
Not on.
メジャーリーグ側からしても日本人からしてもそうですが、あと2年待てば多額の移籍金がもらえるのにと思ってしまう移籍ですよね。そう入ってもやはり素材や能力は一級品で、このバーゲンセールを見逃す球団はいないでしょう。日本人選手のいる場所がいいと話も出ていますが、移籍先が本当に楽しみですね。今後も着目して追っていきたいと思います。皆さんは佐々木選手はどこのチームに行くと思いますか？育成環境等も話が出ていましたので、考慮の上でぜひ予想をコメントで教えてくださいね。それでは次回の動画でお会いしましょう。さようなら。